They said my daughter couldn't fly first class because she looked homeless. The attendant said it in front of everyone, loud enough for the people in line behind us to hear. My daughter's face crumbled. She tried to hold it together, but I saw the tears hit her sneakers. I opened my mouth to defend her, but the attendant cut me off. He waved over security and said we needed to step aside. My heart was pounding. I felt humiliated, furious, helpless. Then, just as they started to escort us away, a man in a suit walked up, pulled out a card, and said 5 words that made the entire terminal go silent. "She's with me." Everyone froze. Even the attendant backed away. That moment changed everything. My name is Raina Quinn, and I've always believed in keeping promises, especially the ones I make to my daughter. Lyra turned 15 last month. She's my only child, my heartbeat, and the strongest person I know. But lately, life had been hitting her harder than most kids her age. Last year, Lyra started high school, and everything changed. She used to be outgoing, creative, loud in the best way. But high school has a way of narrowing the world, of squeezing kids into categories. Lyra didn't fit any of them. She liked oversized sweaters and ripped jeans, old band t-shirts, boots scuffed at the toes. She never cared about looking like everyone else, and I admired that. But some kids saw her as a target. She got called names: weird, homeless, trashy. Teachers said nothing. Friends slowly stopped inviting her over. I watched her fade into herself, pulling her hood up, avoiding mirrors, and pretending it didn't hurt. So when I scraped together enough for a little getaway, I knew it had to be something special. We'd never flown first class before, not even close, but this time I saved for it. I wanted Lyra to feel seen, important, celebrated. It wasn't just a trip. It was a gift for surviving a year that nearly broke her. I didn't tell her until the day we left. She walked into the kitchen and found 2 suitcases packed and sitting by the door. I told her we were going to New York for the weekend. Her eyes lit up in that way I hadn't seen in months. She hugged me tight and whispered, "Really? Just us?" We got to the airport early. She was nervous, but I could tell she was trying to pretend she wasn't. She had put together an outfit she loved. She wore her favorite denim jacket with patches she had sewn on herself, a big hoodie underneath, and cargo pants. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun with a pencil stuck through it, something she always did when she was sketching. She looked like herself. While we were waiting to check our bags, I noticed a few people glance in our direction. One woman gave us a quick up and down and then turned to her husband, whispering something under her breath. I ignored it. People judge. That's on them. We weren't there for them. We were going to have fun. At the gate, I handed our tickets to Lyra and told her to read the seat numbers. When she saw 1A and 1B, her eyes went wide. Wait, first class? You got us first class? I nodded and smiled. Happy birthday, baby. She grinned, really grinned. The kind of grin that lights up a whole face, the kind I hadn't seen in almost a year. She laughed and said, "I feel like royalty." And for a moment she did. But when we walked toward the first-class boarding lane, everything shifted. A young man in a blue airline uniform stepped in front of us. He had a forced, polite smile and tired eyes. He looked at Lyra, then at me, then back at Lyra. "Excuse me," he said. "This lane is for first class." I smiled and handed him our boarding passes. "We're first class." He scanned them, then hesitated. His eyes flicked over Lyra again. I saw his expression shift. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "your daughter's attire doesn't meet our premium cabin standards." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" He lowered his voice slightly, but not enough. People around us were watching now. "She doesn't appear to be dressed appropriately. We have standards in first class, and, well, she looks—" He didn't finish the sentence, but I saw it in his eyes. I knew exactly what he meant. Lyra froze beside me. Her smile disappeared. Her hands clenched around the handle of her backpack. She stared at the ground. I stepped forward. "Are you serious right now?" He sighed, glancing toward a nearby security guard. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside so we can resolve this." Everything that was supposed to be magical about this trip, the surprise, the joy, the pride, was instantly tainted. My daughter, who had already spent the past year trying to shrink herself just to survive, was being judged by a stranger in front of a crowd. She didn't say a word. But I saw the tears building. She was trying so hard not to cry. In that moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from every glare, every whisper, every insult, disguised as policy. But all I could do was hold her hand, while someone in a uniform told us we didn't belong. I didn't move at first. I couldn't. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. We had the right tickets. We were on time. We followed every rule. So why was this man acting like we had no business being there? The gate attendant gestured again. "Ma'am, please, if you'll just step aside, we can clear this up." His voice was calm but condescending, like he was used to people not arguing. He didn't expect a scene. He expected me to quietly take my daughter, walk back to economy, and disappear. But I wasn't going anywhere. I looked down at Lyra. Her head was bowed, her shoulders hunched, her cheeks blotchy with silent tears. She looked small, broken. Not because of what she was wearing, but because someone had looked at her and decided she wasn't worthy of respect, not even a second glance. Just judgment and rejection. My voice was shaking, but I stood straighter. "This is my daughter. She is flying first class. We both are. Check your screen again." The attendant sighed and tapped at his tablet, but I could tell he wasn't looking for anything. He had already made up his mind. He leaned closer and said, "Ma'am, I'm not saying she's not allowed on the flight. I'm saying she's not dressed for the premium cabin. We have certain standards. She's wearing clean clothes. She's covered head to toe. She's dressed comfortably for a flight. What exactly is the problem?" He paused. That moment told me everything. He didn't have a real answer, just an opinion he thought would go unchallenged. Lyra tugged on my sleeve. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, it's okay. Can we just go? I don't want to be here anymore." Her eyes met mine. She was humiliated. Not angry, not defiant, just tired. Tired of being made to feel like she had to apologize for who she was. That look cut through me. It made my stomach twist in a way I can't describe. "No," I said, loud enough for everyone in the gate area to hear. "It's not okay." People had started to notice. A couple standing nearby with designer carry-ons stopped their conversation and stared. An older man 2 rows back tilted his head, listening. Someone further back pulled out their phone. I knew what this looked like. A woman arguing with staff, a kid crying. People love drama at airports. The gate attendant glanced behind him and waved toward the security desk. A uniformed guard began walking toward us. I stepped in front of Lyra. I could feel her trembling behind me. "This is harassment," I said firmly. "My daughter hasn't broken any rules. You are singling her out based on what? Her outfit? You don't get to decide who looks rich enough to sit in first class." The attendant didn't respond. He stood stiffly, eyes flicking toward the approaching guard. Lyra tugged my arm again. "Mom, please stop. Everyone's looking. I just want to go home." I turned and knelt in front of her. "Look at me. You didn't do anything wrong. Do you hear me? You belong here." She didn't answer. She looked away, her face hot with shame. And then the guard reached us. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, voice flat, almost bored. The attendant jumped in. "Yes, I was asking these passengers to move aside. We're trying to sort out a ticket issue." "No," I said quickly, rising to my feet. "There's no ticket issue. We have first-class seats. He just doesn't like how my daughter looks." The guard looked between us, then at the boarding passes in the attendant's hand. "She has a valid seat?" he asked. The attendant hesitated again, then muttered, "Yes, but..." "But what?" I asked, voice rising. Lyra covered her face with both hands. I saw her shoulders shake. She was crying now, trying to hide it. The guard sighed. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me for a minute. Let's step over here and talk." I stood there, frozen. If I moved, it would feel like giving up, like I was agreeing that my daughter didn't belong where she was. I looked around. Dozens of people watching. No one speaking. No one helping. And then I heard a voice behind us, calm and clear. "She's with me." The room seemed to pause. The guard turned. The attendant's mouth fell open slightly. A man in a dark suit stepped forward, holding out a silver card. His expression was unreadable. He looked at the attendant, then at Lyra. I said, "She's with me." That's when everything shifted. The man's voice cut through everything. Not loud, not angry, just calm, certain. It was the kind of voice that made people stop and listen. "She's with me." The security guard stepped back slightly. The gate attendant froze. I turned to look at the man who had spoken. He was tall, in his late 40s maybe, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit with a silver tie. His shoes looked expensive, but not flashy. He had an airline badge clipped to his jacket pocket and a polished demeanor that made it clear he belonged in a place of authority. He held out a sleek silver card. The attendant took one look at it and his entire posture changed. "Oh, of course, I'm sorry, sir," the attendant stammered. "I didn't realize—" The man didn't even glance at him. He looked directly at me, then at Lyra. He stepped forward and knelt slightly, so he was eye level with her. "Hey," he said gently, "that shouldn't have happened to you. Come on, let's get you to your seat." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes red and glassy. She didn't know what to say. Neither did I. The man stood and turned to the gate attendant. "Please process their boarding immediately," he said, voice firm, "and make a note. There's no dress code in this airline's premium cabins that overrides basic respect." The attendant's face turned pale. "Yes, sir." He motioned for us to follow him. The crowd had gone silent, watching as we walked toward the jet bridge. My hand found Lyra's. She squeezed it hard, still shaking. I looked over at her and saw confusion in her eyes. She couldn't understand why this stranger had stepped in. Honestly, neither could I. We boarded the plane through the first-class entrance. The flight attendant smiled at the man and gave him a slight nod of recognition, then greeted us like royalty. Once we were seated, row 1, plush-wide seats, champagne being offered, hot towels passed around. The man stood nearby, hands in his pockets. I found my voice. "Thank you. I don't even know your name." He smiled. "Mason Jett." I blinked. I had heard that name before. "You work for the airline?" "I do," he said with a small nod. "Executive Vice President. I oversee passenger experience, among other things." My stomach flipped. This wasn't just some frequent flyer with status. He was a decision maker, the kind of person who could rewrite policy, the kind of person whose presence instantly changed the rules. "I don't understand," I said. "Why did you step in? You didn't know us." He looked over at Lyra. She was sitting quietly, curled into herself, trying to disappear into the oversized seat. "Because I used to be her," he said simply. "Not exactly, of course. But I know what it feels like to be judged before you even speak. When I was a teenager, I looked different too. I didn't have nice clothes. I worked to pay for my textbooks, and more than once, I was told I didn't belong somewhere because of how I looked." I sat in silence, absorbing every word. "One day," he continued, "a woman stood up for me in a courtroom. I had been summoned for something ridiculous, a dispute over a parking violation I couldn't afford to pay. She didn't know me, but she stood up and vouched for me. She said I deserved a chance, that I was more than what people assumed. I never forgot it." He looked back toward the aisle where the gate attendant had now boarded and was nervously checking the overhead bins. "I made a promise to myself," he said. "If I ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, I'd take it." Lyra finally spoke, her voice so soft it almost disappeared under the hum of the cabin. "Thank you." Mason turned to her and smiled. "You didn't need me to be here to belong, but I'm glad I was." He checked his watch, gave us both a nod, and stepped into the galley to speak with the flight crew. Lyra leaned into me, her head against my shoulder. I wrapped my arm around her and let myself breathe for the first time since we entered the airport. She whispered, "I didn't do anything wrong, did I?" "No, baby, you didn't." For the first time in hours, she believed me. The plane lifted into the air with a smooth, quiet grace. Lyra sat next to the window, knees drawn up, head leaning lightly against the glass. Her body was still tense, but her eyes were steady now. She stared out over the clouds, her reflection faint in the window. I didn't interrupt her. I just let her breathe. A flight attendant came by with drinks and offered Lyra a warm cookie and sparkling water. She thanked her with a shy smile, the first real one since we entered the airport that morning. The air inside the cabin felt different now, softer somehow. The humiliation she'd felt just hours ago still hovered, but something had shifted. She wasn't hiding anymore. Not completely. Mason Jett sat across the aisle. He had returned to his seat after speaking with the crew and now glanced over and gave Lyra a quiet thumbs up. She returned a tiny nod. I leaned closer to her. "You know who he is, right?" She shook her head. "Kind of. You said he works for the airline? He's not just someone who works there. He helps run the entire company. People don't tell him no. They answer to him." Lyra blinked. Why would someone like that care about me? I reached for her hand and gave it a light squeeze. Because he saw you, really saw you, and he remembered what it feels like not to be seen at all. She looked down at her lap and ran her fingers along one of the stitched patches on her jeans. "I didn't think anyone saw me like that." I was about to respond when Mason stood and stepped into the aisle. He walked over and asked if he could sit next to us for a moment. I nodded. Lyra pulled her legs down and sat up straighter, unsure of what to expect. Mason looked at her kindly. "I didn't mean to embarrass you earlier. I know that kind of attention can feel like a spotlight you don't want." Lyra nodded slowly. "I'm not used to people standing up for me." "Well, let me be the first of many," he said. "What's your name?" "Lyra." "Beautiful name," he said. "I meant what I said out there. You didn't do anything wrong. You walked into that gate like you belonged, because you did. And when someone tried to make you feel small, you didn't run. That kind of strength? That's rare." She stayed quiet, but I could see how much his words meant. Her hand stopped fidgeting. Her breathing slowed. "I don't want to overstep," he said, turning slightly toward me, "but I'd like to do something for Lyra. If it's okay with you?" I hesitated. "You already did more than I could have imagined." He shook his head. "I want to go further. The airline sponsors a youth mentorship program, creative fields, entrepreneurship, social impact work. We pair teens with professionals who can help nurture their ideas. We offer support, exposure, and funding for projects that matter." Lyra looked up. "Like art?" "Exactly like art," he said. "I saw your jacket. Those patches, did you design them yourself?" She nodded. "I draw all the time. I like turning my drawings into patches, stickers, prints. I don't show them to many people, though." Mason smiled. "You should. The world needs more people like you creating things that don't look like everything else." Lyra glanced at me. I smiled and nodded. "You should do it, baby." Mason reached into his jacket and handed her a sleek black business card. "Take this. No pressure. You can call or email whenever you're ready. No deadlines. Just an open door." She took it with both hands like it was something precious. "Thank you," she whispered. Mason stood. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "When someone tries to shrink you again, don't let them. You've got more power than you realize." He stepped away and returned to his seat as the flight attendants began preparing for landing. Lyra sat still for a while, holding the card in her lap, then tucked it carefully into the small sketchbook she always carried in her backpack. When we landed, the same gate attendant stood by the door, avoiding eye contact. Mason didn't speak to him again. He didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said had already been done. As we stepped off the plane, Lyra turned to me and said, "I think I want to show people my art, not just hide it." I smiled. "Then that's exactly what you'll do." The moment she said it, I knew something had changed. She didn't just survive that day, she claimed it. We left the airport without saying another word to the staff. There was nothing left to prove. We had our seats. We had our dignity. And we had something more powerful than either of those things. A memory neither of us would forget. That night, after we checked into our hotel, Lyra curled up by the window overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered in the distance. She opened her sketchbook and flipped to a blank page. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, pencil in hand, eyes focused. Then she looked up. "Do you think people will ever stop judging others like that?" I sat across from her on the edge of the bed. "Maybe not all at once, but I think some people are trying. And I think what Mason did today helps. What you're doing right now helps." She glanced down at her drawing, then gave a small smile. "I think I want to make something from this, like a design. Not just about what happened at the airport, but about being seen, about being taken seriously without having to change." I could hear the strength returning to her voice. It wasn't just an idea, it was a decision. When we got home a few days later, Lyra asked me to help her scan some of her drawings into the computer. She wanted to turn them into digital patches and prints. I watched her work for hours, completely focused, her creativity pouring out like it had been waiting for permission. She posted a few designs online. At first, she didn't expect much, but then people started sharing them. A local art program reached out, then a youth gallery, then a community blog did a short feature on her story. She called the collection Belonging. Her tagline was simple: "You don't have to match the room to deserve your seat in it." One afternoon, a package arrived addressed to her. Inside was a letter on premium airline stationery. It was from Mason. He wrote, "Lyra, thank you for reminding me why I do what I do. Your courage and voice are more powerful than you know. I've shared your story, with your permission, of course, with our internal teams, and we've started reviewing the ways we train staff to recognize unconscious bias. Change takes time, but it starts with stories like yours. Stay bold." He enclosed a framed photo from the trip. The two of us in our first-class seats, Lyra holding her sketchbook in her lap, sunlight coming through the window. On the back, he had written, "Some flights change more than your location." That photo sits on Lyra's desk now, next to her art supplies, her laptop, and a small notebook full of new design ideas. She still wears her favorite jacket, still wears her style like armor and art, but something's different. She walks taller. She speaks louder. She no longer apologizes for being herself. And I've changed, too. I used to think my job as a mother was just to protect her. But it's more than that. It's about standing beside her when she faces the world and making sure she sees her worth, especially when others try to take it away. What happened that day at the airport could have broken her spirit. Instead, it became the beginning of something powerful. Not because of the airline, not even because of Mason, but because she chose to turn shame into expression, hurt into purpose. I learned that sometimes one voice can change everything. Mason didn't have to speak. He could have walked past, but he didn't. And because he acted, my daughter saw what it looks like when people use power for good. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: don't underestimate the impact of standing up. When you see someone being diminished, speak. When you hear someone being dismissed, intervene. You don't need a badge or a title to make a difference. Sometimes the simple act of saying, "She's with me," is enough to change the entire direction of someone's life. Lyra's story is still being written, but I know this for certain. She'll never forget the day someone looked at her and didn't see a problem to correct, but a person to protect. And neither will I. If this story moved you or made you think twice about how we treat others, do something with that feeling. Speak up. Show up. Choose kindness even when it's inconvenient. And if you've ever been judged for how you look, how you speak, or simply for being different, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are enough. You belong. If you connected with Lyra's story, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling us what it made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. And if you want more real stories like this, raw, human, and honest, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Thanks for watching. And remember, when someone tries to shrink your light,